Okay, so I've got my basic details working, and now I'm going to set up my annotation. And we've done a lot of this already. You've set up your pages with the title blocks on them. Yeah, that's just... Yeah. We had to go and do drawings while we were on site one day. So, yes, so that's good practice. But then... Oh no, I did that on purpose. I made it yellow. It was originally on white paper. I put it on a sepia background on purpose. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the only one I've done that's not, measured out on a drawing board and a bit too, technical. Yeah, that's a nice loose one that, I don't usually do. So I've got my page, and hopefully I don't need to do the page setup, but I will just right-click and go to the Page Setup Manager, just so that you can see what the page setup is. It's an A3 page, and the scale is 1:1. Yep. So, going back to then look at the viewport, do you remember how to make viewports if you need them? Yeah. Well, I have to show you anyway, because we've got only one viewport there. So I've selected it, and I'm going to make it smaller. So I'll make it about half the size that it is now. It's on my viewport layer. So if you remember in the layer properties, that layer is set to be non-printing. So I can leave the border visible. And so if you've forgotten how to make a viewport, it's on the Layout tab, and then you go to the rectangular option there to make a rectangular viewport, and I'll just make another one over here. Just keep it roughly the same size. So I've got two views there, and I've just double-clicked to make one of them active. And I can double-click to go back to the page, and I'll just change that viewport to the same viewport layer. And then I want to set the scale of this viewport. So down here we'll go to 1:5, which is the scale you need for the assignment. And then I can pan to get the part of the detail that I need. And so now some of you who are asking about that 1200 height that you might want to show in that detail, you can start to test that out. So we can see here, if I offset 1200 and choose my floor line there and then click above, it's gone outside, so that means it's up here, and we probably won't be able to fit that on at this scale on an A3 page. Yeah, that's right, because, I mean, do you have a... Sorry, yeah, that's right. So, yeah, the floor would be, yeah, exactly. So, so do you have a page size? Oh, here we go. So, full document in A1 or A2. So that's right. Now, this is where it's good, because the way I've done this title block, it doesn't need to be changed for a different page size. So we can go to the Page Setup Manager and modify, and then I'll just change it to A2. And then we've got more room to work, and that means you probably can fit it. So I'll bring this one up as well, and again, go into this viewport, I'll make it 1:5 also, and so that might be for the next little detail. And that should work pretty well. So that way you can get a good idea how your details are going to fit on your page, but then also you can start to set up your annotation. And that's really what I wanted to look at. So when you go to your annotation panel on the Home tab, you can then check your text styles, and you most likely already have some set up that you've got for the title block. And while I'm at it, I'll just move that title block across to the corner of this page. And so then back to annotation and the text style. And so then we've got a notes text style that's already been created with whatever font you like. And that's the one I'm using, but you can use any. And then the paper text height there you can see is 2.5. It's also got that annotative option. So if I want to then put some notes on in paper space, I don't need to do anything more. I'll go to my annotation layer, And now I don't have one for general notes, I've just got one for the title block, so I'll go and make a new just Anno, and make it the current layer, and just show you, of course, that if we draw some text, so I'll do multi-line text, and so this might be for the skirting duct. So that's the right size on the page. If I go into the viewport and I'm in model space and I go and do text again, so I'll just do the same thing. It's the same size. So now if I go back to the model tab, you'll see that text was drawn in model space. And then there can be good reasons for doing it in model space. Partly because it can be easier to copy and move things around, especially when you have lots of different notes at different scales. That can be easier. And also, if you need to hatch around the text, that can also be easier. But it's up to you. So you can do it here like I've done it in paper space, like this one here. And that can also be easier because then you can copy, if you want to copy from one viewport to another, that can be easier. So you've got a choice. It doesn't really matter how you do it. As long as you're using that annotative option, you can do it either way because it'll detect the scale. If I look at this text here that's for model space, it knows the scale is 1 to 5 because the scale's set in the viewport. Right, so that also works for dimensions, and I'll show you that shortly. But I wanted to show you as well, if you want to get text that has a leader, how you do that. So have you done leaders in AutoCAD before? Yeah, leaders. Yeah. So you've got under annotation, so below you've got text style, and then you've got dimension style. I'll come back to that next. But then below that you've got leader styles or multi-leader styles. So if you click on that one, yeah, that's it. And then new, and well, actually we'll go for the annotative one to start with, and then click new. So it uses that annotative for the starting settings, and I'll call this, notes or something. It's fine. Okay, so you've got the size here, which again is in paper units. So I'm going to leave that on 4, even though we can't see it here. It's the right size. You can change the arrow though if you don't like that closed one. You can use anyone you want. Yep, that's right. Yep. And so I like the right angle, but you can use any. So then the content can also use one of your text styles that you've made already. So if you've made the text style, then that makes it a lot easier. You can just choose that. And then everything else I'm just going to leave on the defaults. Really important here that the annotative option is ticked there under leader structure. And so the size, it won't look right, but it's going to be. So that's it. I'm going to close this, click OK, and then close, and then just test it by making a leader. And you can see there, even though the arrow wasn't coming up in the preview, that it's obviously visible there, and I can put in a new note. Now the size, that's interesting. It's gone in differently. Okay, so that shouldn't happen. I'll just test that again. Let's just check this. So the content there, so that's definitely 2.5. Yeah, that's all right. So, okay, sometimes you've got to check it in properties afterwards. Oh no, I know what happened. I'll just do this. Yeah, I know what's happened. So I'll just do it again. So yeah, you've got to watch out for that. So when you're typing, why is it 12.5 there? That's odd. So that's the height in millimetres. So that's actually going in as model units. So I'm going to type in 2.5, but also choose annotative, and then type in 2.5, and that'll fix it. It's annoying. It sometimes keeps the setting that it had previously. Yeah. And it's still doing it. So when you go to properties afterwards, you can always check it there. Yep, 2.5, that's right. Is it? No, that should be right. Yeah, no, this one should be the same style. That's not working properly, so there's something going wrong there. That's right, Annotative, yes. Okay, that's frustrating. Yeah, text type definitely 2.5. Okay, so yeah, look, when that happens, let's just click OK. Let's see now if this works. Yeah. Okay, so I think what's happening is the same as with dimensions. You don't always have to do this, but for some reason, sometimes you have to. You can have a special style for your leaders. So I'm just going to go here and make a new style, and I'll just call it, lead for leaders. And then I'm going to change the font to the same one, Swiss 21 BT, and then leave that annotative option off, and then the height 0. That's the trick. So now, I'll just go back and make sure that that text style called lead is set in the leader style. And that'll let me set a text height in the leader style to 2.5. And so then now you'll see it should be right, even though here it's still not. What's going on? Oh no, here it's because this one's 3.5. Okay, so it is right. Yeah. There we go. That's right. So these ones, I forgot, those were 3.5. So now it's all perfect. And I think it was before, actually. I was just confusing myself. So anyhow, that's not a bad option though, because if you have a text style that's only used for your leaders, that can make it a bit easier to control it, and also gives you the option of setting the text height in the leader style. And once you do this once in your template, you don't ever have to do that again. And so make sure you set it up and then keep using that template to start your new files, and that should make it easier. And that's what obviously I probably struggle a bit when I've got to set it up again, but there we are. So, yeah. There we are. So, leaders are actually really good in AutoCAD. If you think they're fiddly, 2.5 for those, yeah. Yeah, so if you think they're fiddly in AutoCAD, have a go at doing them in Illustrator, and you'll see they're even more painful. They work in Illustrator too, but you've got even more options to dig through to get them working there. So I've got my leaders working, and then the last one is dimensions. So I'll just quickly run through that. So if you go to the Annotate panel, and then go to your Dimension Style button. Now I've already got one that I've set up, but I'll make a new one just to go through it from scratch, because it's good to just go through every setting, even though it might seem like a lot at first. You'll see, once you've done it a few times, that you'll know what all these settings do. So I'll start with Annotative, because you'll always have that one. I'm going to click New, and then call it something new. So my dim style. Whatever, the name doesn't really matter because you only need one. So the way I do it, you only need to make one dimension style for everything you ever do in AutoCAD. Because I know last year you would have been shown to make several of them, several dimension styles, for every different scale. But then for each different scale, you would have needed a different one, the way you were doing. Oh, right, yeah, one scale. Yeah, so but then when you needed to change scale, you would have needed new styles. Yeah, yeah, you must have. Yeah. Yeah, you must have. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, but this way, as long as you use that annotative option, one style will do every scale. So that way we can go through every setting and you've only got to do it once. So, don't worry about tolerances or alternative units. They're basically for engineers. You'll never need to go that far. So, start on primary units. So you go right to left, it's easier. So primary units. And the linear dimensions, what you're going to measure your lengths with. Of course, you leave that on decimal. And then the precision, just think about it logically. When you're measuring in millimetres, do you need decimal places for millimetres? Is a builder? No, that's right. Builders are never going to measure a fraction of a millimetre. So you don't need to show that. So 0 for precision, for millimetres. But then the decimal separator still might come up. So make sure you set that to a period because you don't want a comma, unless you're in Europe. And then rounding off is optional, but I'll in practice set that to 5 quite often because most builders are not going to measure even something that's 5 millimetres in real life. But that's up to you. So you can leave it at 0 to start with, and then if you notice you've got lots of weird measurements, come back and you can always round that off. The units format for angles, again, leave that on decimal to start with, but occasionally you might want to change that to degrees, minutes, seconds. Have you seen those before?
Yeah,
the surveys, yep. Yeah. And then for the precision, you will want decimal places, usually for angles. Right? Because fractions of angles are used all the time. So at least 1 decimal place and sometimes 2. Coming back then to the Fit tab, all you need to check there usually is that you've got the annotative option ticked, but then also change this text placement option, usually to over dimension line with leader. Right, that's for when you get the text not fitting in between your dimension and the number goes outside it. And so you want a leader that goes to that number so you know what it's measuring. Right, that's all that sets. The rest you can leave on default, but occasionally you might want to come back and adjust these things to change how your dimension text looks, pretty much. Well, that's where the things get fitted into that dimension. But then the text tab, of course, also changes how your text appears. So there, most important thing is that you have a text style just for your dimensions. So click on the browse button there, and then I've got one, of course, called dim, which I've already made, but if you don't have that, just click the new button, call it something like dim or dim1, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. And the font is up to you, so Arial is okay. And the height, really important you leave that on 0. And then don't tick annotative for this one. So that's the key to it. Basically, if you've got annotative set somewhere else, don't set it again in your text style. So that's it. I've made my new dimension style and now my new text style, and now I'm going to choose it here from the list. And because it doesn't have a height set in the text style, I can set the height here. And 2.5 is okay, but if you've got a lot of dimensions, you might need to take it down to 2. But don't go any lower than 2 because, honestly, old people like me can't read it anymore. Everyone gets short-sighted as they get older. You probably all know your parents and, again, people like me. I can't read anything closer than a metre anymore. It's terrible. No, it's shocking, yeah. Yeah, that's it. I know, I thought it was just, they're going crazy, but it's because we're going blind. And I used to be able to read the text, no problem. Without glasses. If you get to even with glasses. So no smaller than 3. And if you can do 2.5, that's better. The text alignment, I don't think I've shown you this one before. Align with text is good. The ISO standard is better. Just a little thing. It's kind of like align with text, but it does one other little thing. Just basically this one's like it. But don't do horizontal. That's the one. But the one or ISO standard is good. So look at text, everything else is fine there, and then symbols and arrows. So really important here, you choose one of the ticks, either architectural or one. The architectural is one. And then the leader, it doesn't matter because if you're going to use the leader tool, it's got its own settings. So this setting here for the leaders probably doesn't make any difference. And then the arrow size, you can leave that on 2.5, that's fine. Everything else is fine. But then you need to set a tick option because when you go back now to the Lines tab, these extend beyond the ticks option. And this one as well, I think, but definitely that one there, it doesn't come up unless you've got a tick set. Oh yeah, definitely. So at least 1 or 1.5, and then extend beyond view lines to about 1.5, and that's it. So then you can see there that all looks good. The text maybe is a little bit large, so we go back and make it down to 2 mil. You can have a lot. That's the only way to make it. And that's weird. It's gone and that's 2.5. Now it's it is. So jumping down to 2 now. Now it's starting. Yeah, that preview is about reasonable. Yeah. I mean the settings are the same. But you know, yeah, you know. But anyway, that's fine. And then I'll make it my current style. And so to test it out, I'm going to draw some dimensions in model space. So that's working. And then I'll go to my, that's in paper space, sorry. Right, but that's working as well. So if I go and go to model space, and then to another dimension, you can see that works as well. So that's a great thing, and it means that you can draw it either way, and you'll be seeing as you draw more things, that there'll be times when you want to draw it in model space, other times when you want to draw it in paper space. And as long as you're using Annotative, they both work. Yeah, it's hard to explain the draw like this, but okay, so the main thing is hatching, but also just practical, here we go, there's one I can show you. So this drawing's obviously got a few more dimensions. So I've done all those in model space. So there we are on the model tab, and you can see all the dimensions there. That's a good thing going. It's a, yeah, and so it was much easier for me to draw all these dimensions on the model tab and then copy them from one plane to the other. That made it easier. Also, because the hatching, see with this text here, I wanted to go around the text with that hatch there. So that was much easier in model space. And then also you'll see if you start, moving things around, especially when you're drawing a lot in model space, and then you come back later and realise that on your page you had all the text and other things that now, when you move things and change things in model space, don't line up anymore. It can be hard to keep track of it. So that's why often I'll do most of it in model space. But then if you have lots of notes, again, you want to copy from one sheet to another. So if you've got, let's see if we've got another one here with multiple views on it. No, but I'm sorry to say that one. That's a big drawing. Okay, so you can see on this floor plan that I've got similar notes. So timber floorboards over concrete slab beams for this bit. And then up here, same note. Right, so it's easier then just to copy those notes in paper space from one way out to another, rather than doing it in model space. So does that make sense? When you're doing things like that. So that's why some notes are definitely easier to do that way. But 6 of 1 half of them with the other sometimes there's probably no can go away or something. Which is so okay, so the final thing I'll point out that I'm really trying to get everyone to is once you've got a good handle on that and you can do all the annotation that you need with your text and dimension and now your reader tools as well, you can do all of that. So the key to detailing isn't so much the drawing. The drawing, as you can probably tell already, can be done with these commands: line, polyline, circle R, those 4 drawing commands that you've got there, but it's the notes that make a difference with details. It's all annotation. And I'll just show you, maybe I've got some details here that are a bit more complete. I don't know the next one. Oh, there's some schedules, so you want to see some your schedules, some window schedules. That's something all you'll need for a project like this, just tables. They can be done with drawings as well. So that would have a drawing of each door and window, but you don't need to go that way. Right? A plan and normally an elevation is the most important. Sometimes you would actually have a plan with them as well, like the elevation. Exactly, that's right. Yeah, windows are really important. So I should have here, I thought I had the detail well, let's see. Well, at least this has got, this is just a set of tiles for it. Where's the details? Oh, here we go. So, that's just some sections. I've got the details. Here we go. This is not finished detail, but it will give you some idea. That's what we've got. There's some details. So, should have some more details to show you, but I'll tell you, I'll get them from I'll go some better ones. I'll show you from somewhere else. And I'll give you these on Real as well. So yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, sure. No, we're good. Okay, so here we go. This is good. Well, that's kind of a detail. It's not the one I wanted. Right. Just some details of with the notes I want to show you. So, just sending a little, and I'm just going to make this moment for that for you. these details here somewhere, and I can't find them. So I'll go and find another folder of copies these as well. All I'm trying to show you is basic detail, and that should be very hard to find. Here we go. So let's just see. There we go. That one is okay. We can try that one better. Moving on. So, the drawings are quite simple. The things you can draw in with lines. Here we go. This is what I was after. That's your standard construction detail, which you can all draw if you know the line command and not much else in whatever. That's the gap in the bricks. So where the border would normally go, the vertical, the perpendicular. Has a normally mortar, but they just leave that out. So there's a gap you'll see in any brick wall every so often, where they leave the vertical perpendicular open for the water to come out. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you could. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So anyhow, the key to it is notes. So once you can set your notes and get the right size for the text and the arrows and then all your things for dimensions, then you can do all the details. It's really all about the annotation. And so you've got the photos as well. I put the ones that I think Caitlin nicely gave us into the folder on the P drive as well, just in photos there. So you can get all those notes and just copy them from John's details. Right, so you've got all those there. So you don't have to come up with your own notes, just copy John's, and that should give you everything you need. So it's really just about adding a lot of text to your dimensions, to your details to finish them off. So, oh yeah, okay. So if you want to try that, so in the leader settings, if you want to bend the arrows or have extra points, so in your leader settings, you've got options there in the leader structure for the number of points. Yeah, and then you can also set it to go as a spline instead of having hard corners. And so that is one of these. Where is it again? And yeah, there's an option for splines if you want a curvy one. And yeah, I always forget where that is, but where is it again? Where did you find it? Oh, that's right. Yeah, there, spline. That's it. Yeah, 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 yeah. So that's optional, but you can try that. And so it's nice that it changes them more globally. Yeah, some people prefer it, but so yeah. So just in the leader style, you've got that option on the leader format tab to choose spline instead of straight. Yeah. Sure, nice. Okay, so all of that was to hopefully mostly revision, but it's good to go over it again until it's comfortable. And then, so then we haven't actually gotten to do the section markers yet, but with those you do need to think a lot about scale, because they often will need to go in on the model tab, and you'll have a whole range of things that need to be scaled then. So it's a bit more involved, the setup of those, and you've got to get the attributes to scale as well. So maybe I'll give you some time just to get all the general notes and dimensions and leaders working, and you've got plenty of time to do your other drawing.